The stairwell at my office building was notorious for being creepy. The lights inside hadn't been changed for years, meaning they flickered on and off constantly. The janitorial staff was either too lazy or didn't have enough time to clean it, because it was always covered with dirt and grime. We tried to avoid it as much as possible. I was lucky. I'd gotten a job there right out of college, along with two others, Kelsey and Mick, who were both my pretty good friends. It was Mick who suggested we try the game with the stairs. When I heard the rules, I was convinced that he had completely ripped off the elevator game. I'm sure you've heard a lot about that lately. There's been a ton of stories about that all over the internet. He admitted it was quite similar, but insisted he hadn't come up with it himself. We never were able to figure out where he had gotten the instructions. The rules were pretty simple. Find a building with a stairwell. The number of stories had to be odd. The taller you can get, the better. But it can be done with as little as 7 or 5. Ours had 15, so it was perfect. Step 2. Place one player at the bottom of the stairwell, one at the top, and one as close to the middle floor as you can get. Then the player on the bottom will walk up, and the player on the top will walk down. The pace is important. Both must do this at a relaxed speed. Slowing down or speeding up will skew the results. The player in the middle must wait there until either the ascender or descender reaches them. Whichever one gets there first, the middle player must travel in the opposite direction. The first to reach the middle must wait until the loser, or the one that didn't get to the middle first, reaches them. Then go in the opposite direction of the original middle. For example, if the descender reaches the middle player first, the middle player ascends while the first descender waits for the loser to come up, at which point they will swap places. The loser waiting in the middle while the first descender continues descending. Once the spaces have been jumbled about, one on the top, one in the middle, and one on the bottom, the ritual is repeated 2 more times. Then, as Mick described it, something will happen. It sounded needlessly complicated, and the unclear nature of what the something was made it hard for Mick to convince us to do it. In all honesty, it seemed like a thinly veiled attempt to get us to exercise. But we were bored one Friday night, and all 3 of us had keys to the building, so we decided to give it a go. We drew straws to determine our roles. I was placed on the top, Mick got the middle, and Kelsey stood on the bottom. For maximum effect, we waited until 11:30 at night to sneak into the building. The janitorial staff had left an hour previously. It was highly unlikely that our game would be interrupted. We met on the 8th floor, phones fully charged. The rules didn't stipulate it, but we decided we'd text each other when we got to our respective positions. It would make communication a lot easier. Kelsey protested that I was at the top and would easily beat her to the middle, as walking down is way less tiring than walking up. Mick pointed out that in order to get my spot, I would have to climb up while she would have to climb down. He assumed the extra work would tire me out a little and slow my pace. With a nod, we left. I heard Kelsey's footfalls echoing up towards me. "May the best man win," Mick called out as I lost sight of him. True to their reputation, the lights flickered on practically every flight I passed them. Between the 11th and 12th floors, the bulbs went out completely, and I had to climb in the shadows for a few moments. It sent a chill down my spine, and I quickened my pace. My legs, admittedly, felt a little weary by the time I reached the top. Checking my phone, I saw that Kelsey had beaten me to her position by about 10 seconds. It wasn't looking good. Peering down the center, I saw that the light was still out between 11 and 12, creating a dark space contrasting with the 14 other bright spaces I could see. I replied that I was in position. Before I could get my bearings, Mick texted go, and I started my trek down. It was much easier descending than ascending. I found myself picking up my pace when my foot suddenly slipped and I stumbled, running into the wall on the 10th floor. I swayed for a few seconds before regaining my senses and continuing down, but I was too late. Kelsey sneered at me as I reached the 8th floor landing. I could hear Mick making his way down. She patted me on the shoulder as she went up. "Ah, better luck next time." I leaned against the wall as I waited for the confirmation text to come in. To my surprise, Mick's came in a full 15 seconds before Kelsey. From her, instead of a confirmation, I got a picture of a dent in the wall and a foot-shaped smear in the dirt on the 10th floor landing. "Did somebody trip?" she asked. I texted back, "Yeah, now go." Instantly the stairwell echoed with the footfalls. I stood there, appreciating the small rest before my lungs would start burning again from all the climbing. Much to my dismay, about a minute later, Mick reached me first. I questioned how he, the guy who ate Doritos and Gatorade for lunch every day, managed to beat Kelsey by ascending, but held my tongue. He gave me a smug grin as I started. "It's a long way down. Might want to pack a tent." He laughed as he disappeared from my sight. 2 floors later, I heard Kelsey arrive and swap places with Mick, who started up. Almost to the bottom, I began to curse Mick for this stupid experiment. What was this supposed to accomplish? Would we find gold once it was done? Would we be cursed and have some ghost come kill us? The anger subsided when I reached the 1st floor. I did need to go to the gym more often. If anything, I was getting a workout. I sent my confirmation only seconds before Mick sent his. With a go from Kelsey, I charged up the stairs. I didn't care if I was breaking the rules of the game. The quicker I got the last round out of the way, the quicker I could get out of there. I thought I was doing well before I reached the 7th floor, and heard Mick call down. "You lose." Sure enough, Kelsey's ascending footsteps followed shortly after. I cursed in frustration as I reached the 8th floor. Mick smiled smugly at me as we swapped places, him heading down. "Wait, what happens now?" I asked. He turned and shrugged. "I don't know. At least I got you off your ass tonight, right?" He laughed and started down. Kelsey's "what now" from the chat came a few seconds later. My reply was interrupted by a series of texts from Mick, who was reporting his floors in real time as he went down. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. I looked down the center. Just as Mick's foot hit the bottom of the stairwell, the lights on the 1st floor shut off. There was silence for a few seconds, followed by a blood-curdling scream echoing from down below. 3 seconds passed, which I spent wondering what happened to Mick. Had he slipped and hit his head? Did he twist his ankle? Was he just fucking with us? I didn't have any time to think about it farther. Immediately the lights on the 2nd floor shut off. 3 more seconds. Then the 3rd. Then the 4th. By the time the 5th shut off, I had made the connection. Running for the stairs, I made it to the landing between 8 and 9 by the time the 6th had shut off. Somewhere above me I heard Kelsey scream, asking what happened. The 7th shut off below as I reached the 9th. I cried out for her to get out. Reaching the 10th as the 8th went dark. The floor on the 15th opened and closed as I slipped, falling and hitting my head on the landing between the 11th and 12th. As I swayed for a few seconds, the 10th shut off. When I got to my feet, the 11th had gone off as well. I had a few moments to register the darkness that lay a single flight away from me. It looked too black to be merely shadows. The dim light from 12 above failed to illuminate any part of the floor below. It seemed to almost float up the stairwell, flowing like water in a raging river. I reached the 12th and had my foot on the first step of the next one when it shut off. Cold air rushed past. Looking back for just a moment, I saw that the heel of my left shoe was missing. Stumbling, I almost tripped again, but managed to regain my composure and pass the 13th floor just as it went off. With a burst of adrenaline that only panic can provide, I made it to the landing between 14 and 15 just as the 14th shut off. Looking up, I saw Kelsey holding the door to the hallway open, a terrified look on her face. With one last burst of speed, I dove, tumbling through the door just as the 15th went black. Instantly, a searing hot pain erupted near my right ankle. I collapsed on the hall floor, gagging and crying. My right foot had been messily severed at the ankle. Blood was spurting from the open wound, and fragments of bone and skin littered the carpet right up against the door. Kelsey called the police and tied a tourniquet around my leg. The paramedics were there within 10 minutes. As I was loaded into the back of the ambulance, a police officer asked me what had happened. I tried to answer, but just managed to choke out a gasping breath. That was 6 months ago. I have a prosthetic now. The police searched the stairwell but found no trace of either my foot or Mick. They checked the security cameras on the first floor, but the feed cut out at 11:30 and only resumed a half hour later. I quit my job at that company, and Kelsey and I went our separate ways. I haven't spoken to her since, although I've been thinking about it lately. Last night, I was laying in bed when I received a text. Checking my notifications, I saw it was from Mick. In the message was a single video link. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. It showed the bottom of the stairwell at my old office building. A hand, ragged and bloody, reached out and opened the door that should have led to the first floor hallway. Instead, it led to the bottom of another stairwell. The camera traveled up a flight and opened the second floor door, revealing another stairwell. It repeated these actions an endless number of times, the screen gradually getting darker and darker until it was pitch black. And in the background, I heard sobbing.